for Marysville PD. Marysville PD, we did our own detective work. I was one of the first community-oriented policing officers in Marysville. I've served as a sergeant at both Marysville and Yuba City Police Departments. When Marysville Police Department was without a chief, I stepped up and handled administrative work. I managed my division's share of a $7.5 million budget. I know budgets. I successfully secured and managed law enforcement grants exceeding over $1 million in all of my time at Marysville. I'm convinced that I'm the most experienced candidate on the panel, having worked in a jail, having worked in traffic and patrol divisions, and having managed a successful cadet program, which is putting well-trained officers on our streets. But the number one thing I know how to do best is how to lead people. At Yuba City Police Department, I have officers that are competing to work for me because of the type of environment that I create for the men and women under my supervision. It's no secret that there are morale issues at the Sheriff's Department, and we don't need to spend taxpayer dollars on an audit to determine what they are. I'm a lifelong Yuba Sutter resident. I've made it my mission in both my personal and professional life to build relationships within my community. I've never just sat behind a desk and called the shots. I'm out in the community doing the work, building alliances, and building trust. I've led my career with integrity in the line of duty. I am known for my firm but fair approach to law enforcement. I would never ask the men and women who work for me to do anything that I wasn't willing to do myself, which is why you will see me working alongside the men and women I lead. This is the type of leadership that we need in the Sheriff's Department. Some of the changes that I plan to make as your sheriff is to immediately evaluate those individuals who are causing problems and their superiors who fail to address problematic behaviors. These actions will no longer be tolerated. As Sutter County taxpayers, take a moment and ask yourselves, how much are you willing to pay in lawsuit settlements? I will lead from out front. When I'm out meeting with my constituents, some of them don't even know the name of our current sheriff. That will change once I'm elected because I will be someone that you're going to see at the football games or at the farm or at the Yuba Sutter Fair purchasing animals, not just during election time. I will be accessible. I'm going to establish a first-of-its-kind citizen advisory panel in Sutter County. I know the citizens in Rioso and Robbins and even Meridian feel like their voices aren't heard, so I plan to create an advisory panel to address crime in rural parts of the county before they become major problems. I've created a program called Rural Shield to help residents in rural parts of the county fight crime. I'm going to be revealing that program next month. I plan to reform Sutter County's concealed carry program. As a member of the NRA, I strongly believe that armed citizens who are free from mental defect and have approved storage facilities in their homes make society safer. The only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. As a member of the Howard Jarvis Taxpayer Association, I feel that we can run the Sheriff's Department more efficiently. There is very little collaboration between Yuba City Police Detective Unit and the Sutter County Detective Division. Criminals don't stop when they hit the city limit signs. I look forward to working with Chief Landon to join efforts to run a more effective Joint Investigations Task Force. After all, Yuba City PD and Sutter County Sheriff's Department are only 2 blocks apart. I want to save taxpayers money while improving public safety for the citizens, but I want people to feel safe. I want the people of Sutter County to feel that you can trust that we are always going to do the right things for the right reasons. I'm a 3-time recipient of the Officer of the Year Award. I hold the Medal of Valor from Marysville PD. I am a well-rounded candidate, and I feel that I can lead Sutter County Sheriff's Department with honesty and integrity. As Sutter County Sheriff, I will proudly wear a uniform to work every day, something we haven't seen from the sheriff in our county in many years. I will be a sheriff that Sutter County residents can be proud of. I'm endorsed by your friends and family, the Yuba City Sergeants Group, Supervisor Dan Flores, Yuba City Mayor Preet Didball, Yuba City Mayor, Vice Mayor, and CHP Commander retired Sean Harris, Live Oak City Council Member and former Mayor Steve Alvarado, Marysville Chief of Police Christian Sachs, Wheatland Chief of Police Alan Whiteman, Yuba City Chief of Police retired Richard Dosher, former Yuba City Mayor and City Council Member Roy Ramirez, former Yuba City Mayor and City Council Member Karen Carticelli and Cash Gill, the Professional Labor Unions Local 228 and Operating Engineers Local 3, and countless others. As your sheriff, I will not pick and choose which laws to enforce and which to ignore. I will represent the entire public equally and fairly, not pay favoritism to any special interest group. This is a quote that I'm going to read. We were actually strategizing to put all of the women up at the front. If they're going to start shooting, it's going to be the women that are going to be televised all across the world getting shot by these rogue federal agents. Mr. Mack made that statement to the press at the Bundy Ranch standoff when federal snipers were put into position. I am morally and fundamentally opposed and disagree with women being used as human shields, and therefore I respectfully excuse myself from further participation in this forum. Thank you.
Sheriff Mack, would you like to respond to that?
Well, we all know that the press always gets it right, and that the press, Mr. Howe, is that his name, Howe?
Hauk.
Howe, if he had been there, he would have seen that two things. One, that the women were up front, and they were never being used as shields, and nor did I ever mention to use them as shields. The women were already there, and I was admiring so much their courage and their bravery of sticking with their man. One other thing, these women were not in front of ISIS or Al Qaeda. They were not in front of a terrorist group. They were in front of the United States government. And the order to kill them was given. And I was really amazed at the bravery and courage of these women. He was not there, I was. And to quote that as if everything had been said correctly and not taken out of context, it's not fair and it's dishonest. If he'd had the courage to be there along with us against the rogue element that existed with the federal government, they were ready to kill, and the order to kill was given over cows. And again, this was the United States government, not ISIS. There should have been no concern for anybody's safety because we believe that the federal government would use proper discretion when it comes to situations. So, he didn't want to be here. That comment that was made, a lot of it was taken out of context, and the situation was a very tense one. It shouldn't have been that way, but the federal government should not have been there ready to kill anybody in the first place. And had the local sheriff
Sorry, guys.
none of that would have ever happened.
Thank you, Richard. You started to break up just there at the very end, but we heard the bulk of that. So apologize that we have to interrupt the introductions here to respond to that. That was obviously unexpected. And of course, as expected from a sheep who listens to mainstream media and nothing else, didn't stick around to hear that rebuttal. So he just wanted to throw out his accusation and not hear a defense of that accusation. So that was most unfortunate. But it's too bad he didn't stick around. He said some very disturbing things. I took some notes down. I would really like to get some answers to the conditions he plans on placing CCW applicants that are not currently in place, such as not having any mental deficiencies. I'd like to know who's going to decide that and what constitutes a mental deficiency. He also referred to an approved storage for our guns. Now, that's not currently a requirement for a CCW applicant, so I certainly want to get an answer to that to see where he stands on where he's coming off with these conditions he's placing on CCW applicants. So thank you very much for your response, and I think we'll get back to our introductions now and moving on. So thank you so much, Richard. Stand by, here comes the next guy.
First of all, I'd like to thank the Sutter Butte Tea Party for putting on this forum. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Jeff Pierce. I'm running for Sutter County Sheriff. I've been in law enforcement for nearly 40 years. 36 of those years I've been with the Sutter County Sheriff's Office. For the past 7 years, I have been the Undersheriff, second command to Sheriff Paul Parker. During my tenure in my career in law enforcement, I've worked pretty much everywhere that you can work in a jail. I've worked in jail, I've worked courts, I've worked civil, patrol, detectives, and narcotics. In addition, I've held a lot of special teams, and I've been on a field training officer, firearms instructor, a canine handler. I've been a SWAT team leader and a SWAT team commander. I graduated from Wheatland High School and went on to Yuba College and obtained an associate arts degree in administrative justice, and also received a bachelor's of science degree in criminal justice through Sacramento State. I am a graduate of the FBI National Academy, and I do hold multiple police officers and standards certificates, including a post-management certificate. I've been honored twice while I was at Sutter County as Officer of the Year. I have multiple letters of commendations and leadership awards. I've done a lot of things in my career, always trying to make it better for our citizens. I've upgraded the technologies, moving computers into cars and cameras into cars. Computers allowing our deputies to have direct access to federal, state, and local databases. I've been in the process of doing multiple upgrades to 911 systems, and I'm currently working on a 911 system upgrade to include 911 techs. During the 86 and the 97 flood, we had a communication problem. We had a lot of officers from different agencies come to our area and try to communicate, and everybody had different radio frequencies, and we didn't have enough radios to go around. We had some lessons learned off of that, and I was instrumental in putting together a radio interoperability project where I used state and federal grants to buy an interoperability radio system so that when people come with different frequencies, we are able to hook them up and communicate better. That was evident during the Oroville incident that we just had. Our radio communication went flawlessly. I also was involved in putting the regional interoper system on the buttes. In addition, I found federal and state grants and put together a command van that could allow us to respond to emergencies throughout the county and be able to set up and have a command staff there, as well as having an alternative dispatch center if needed. This also carries that radio interoperability system. I've been involved in many programs throughout my tenure. I wrote the grant for the school resource officer and implemented that program. I put together a farm equipment ID program, and I recently put together the Rural Aero Rural Patrol. I've been involved in putting a session plan together, an officer's charge plan together, a career development plan, and many others. I've been involved in a lot of organizations throughout my life. I was a Boy Scout. I served on the United Way Allocation Committee. I'm an NRA member. I sit on the Salvation Army Advisory Board. I am a member of the Farm Bureau of Yuba Sutter and the past California Narcotics Association, and I'm a member of the Corners Association along with Cal NINA 911. I'm also a member of the FBI Associates and a member of the California Agriculture Pilots Association. I've volunteered for nearly 2 decades in helping our youth and high school football players and mentoring them so that when they get out of high school, they're able to be a productive citizen. I have 3 boys and 5 grandsons. In addition, I have farmed in Sutter County for over 30 years in the South Sutter area. As your sheriff, I will work to decrease the response times to some of our calls, especially the rural area of the county. I will strengthen the gang task force. I will stand up for further expansion of marijuana, recreational marijuana. I will be a defender of your Second Amendment rights. And I will work to improve the relationships with our community, such as developing a citizen academy. Again, that's just a partial of what I've done in my career, and I thank you.
Thank you.
All right, good evening. My name is Brandon Barnes. I'm a current captain over at the Yuba County Sheriff's Department, just across the river, but I'm about a 20-year resident here of Sutter County. So here's the good news. I'm not going to tell you how cool I am and then turn tail and run out the door. I realize there's going to be some tough questions that you guys are going to ask of us. Thank you. You guys are going to ask tough questions. You guys should ask tough questions because this is an important decision that you guys are going to be making on behalf of Sutter County, and it's really going to impact how we're moving forward in the future. So I want to share a little bit with you about myself. For 22 years now, I've been over at the Yuba County Sheriff's Department. Now, probably the most common comment I get is you don't look old enough to run for sheriff. I'm 45 years old. I've been over there 22 years. And if you were to count up all my education, my training, and my service time, I've spent more than half my life dedicated to this profession of law enforcement. I started back in the jail. I was there for a very short period of time, about 10 months. From there, I went out to patrol, and I went through the FTO program. One of my training officers is actually here tonight, so John, thank you for being here. Absolutely. During my time on patrol, I worked a variety of assignments, bike patrol, community policing as well. Within about 4 years, I had the good fortune of being promoted to the rank of sergeant. And that was primarily because of how hard I was working and the dedication I was showing to our organization. So I was a sergeant for a period of time, and they had the good fortune to put me out in charge of our community policing unit. And so I spent a lot of times working blight issues, working hand in hand with code enforcement, and actually working down in the river bottoms to address some of the homeless issues that were down there even at that time. And so I have a good grasp on that. From there, I came back to patrol for a period of time, and then I went and I got an investigative assignment. So I spent about 3 years in detectives, and during that time, I worked every type of possible case you could imagine. I worked one particular homicide that took me as far away as Alabama to chase a bad guy down and take him into custody and bring him back to justice. And so I've got a lot of experience in investigations. Additionally, when I was in investigations, I promoted to the rank of lieutenant. And so I got to continue to supervise the investigations unit as a lieutenant, and I did that for about another 3 years. So again, multiple types of investigations, all throughout Yuba and Sutter areas. I decided that I needed to go back to patrol and get some supervisory experience there, so I had the opportunity to do that. I did that for about another 3 years, and at that point, working for Sheriff Durfer, I told him that I knew at one point I wanted to promote to the rank of captain. But I also really like being a cop. And so, as most of you can probably imagine, when you promote to captain, you really cross that line into administration and you don't get to do all the fun stuff that you used to do, like chasing bad guys. And so I asked for another stint in investigations, and he was kind enough to grant me that. And so from investigations, promoted to captain. Now, when I promoted to captain, the sheriff asked me what assignment I thought I might like, and I told him that I wanted to go back and be the jail commander, something I hadn't done in over 20 years. There was a couple reasons I wanted to do that. One is I knew I wanted to try to run for sheriff one day. If you guys follow the state and prison reform, which I know a lot of you guys are pretty keen on that stuff, the very same people that went around suing the state and causing reform and pushing all of those inmates down to the county level, they're now turning around and they're suing the county. And so we have to really make sure that all of our policies are airtight and that we have good practices, good policy to avoid lawsuits. I will share with you, Yuba County is actually going through some mediation right now. I've spent more time in federal court than I care to, but how nice would it be for me to take that playbook, bring it over here to Sutter County, and start implementing change that's going to protect us from future lawsuits? I think that's really important. couple other things I would like to share with you. Kind of throughout my career, I had an opportunity to be on SWAT team for the better part of about 19 years. I started at the very low end of the totem pole, and I was the person that got to carry all the gear. The last 7 years of my career, I was a SWAT commander. So all the call-outs in the middle of the night, I came out and I had total operational control of those incidents. I was making decisions on behalf of the county and on behalf of the sheriff and protecting the county from liability. I'm proud to say that during my tenure as the commander, none of my guys ever got hurt under my command, which means our planning was sound and our training was sound as well. And so I'm very proud of that. A couple other things I'll share with you guys. My education, I do have my bachelor's degree in police management. Like Jeff, I'm also a graduate of the FBI National Academy. If you're not familiar with what that consists of, only 1% of the nation's law enforcement officers actually get to go through that program back in Quantico, Virginia, so it's very prestigious. When I came back from that, I started looking at other opportunities, and California actually has something called Command College, and it's an 18-month program, and the whole emphasis of this program is learning how to not only manage a department, but move it into the future. You talk about strategic planning, things of that nature. One of my platforms is to do an internal audit of the Sheriff's Department. That's what Mr. Houck was referring to. He wrongly assumes that I'm going to come up with some ridiculous price tag to do that. Part of going to the FBI Academy, part of having resources throughout the state and getting endorsements from other state sheriffs is you have resources available to you. You can call those people in and they can help you figure out how to make your organization better. And if they don't have the time to do it, well, guess what? I have the training to do it because I've been to the classes and I know how to do that. And so as I look around, and my decision to do this was quite simple. I looked around and I was kind of surveying the landscape, and it was rumored that Sheriff Parker might be retiring. Sheriff Parker is a very good man, but quite frankly, our Sheriff's Department has been sitting idle for the last couple of years. And that leadership comes from the top down. I will tell you that I've had the opportunity to get to know the men and women of the Sheriff's Department, and there are a lot of good men and women working there. But they need direction, and they need leadership, and they need somebody that's going to step up and walk side by side with them. That is missing from our current administration in the Sheriff's Department, sadly. Before I conclude, I'll just share one little example with you. Actually, I'll share two with you. Every year, Yuba City Police Department does the Peace Officer Memorial. Departments from all around come and they take part in that. Last year, I didn't see a single Sutter County officer there. Okay? To me, that's very disrespectful. I had an opportunity to go to a dinner the other night. It was the Hop Sing dinner. They had representatives from both sides of the river, Board of Supervisors, department heads. When they called out Sutter County's name, nobody stood because nobody was there. To me, that's embarrassing as a member of this community. So I'm sure we'll have some tough questions coming forward, but that's me. I live in Live Oak with my wife Jen, who's here tonight. We have 4 kids together, and we're just looking to make an impact and try to make Sutter County Sheriff's Department great again. I will tell you that when I first started a long time ago, Sutter County was the Sheriff's Department you wanted to go work at. It was the premier department in our area. That was long before Yuba City started making big money. Now all of a sudden you have people leaving Marysville Police Department to go work at Sutter County, and within a couple months they leave and go back to Marysville Police Department. There's something seriously broken there, and with your guys' support, electing me into office, we'll start getting things changed and we'll make some positive improvements. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Really appreciate that, and I really appreciate you taking the time out to come and talk to us. We really like what you have to say, and are glad that you're going to field our questions. Sheriff Mack, I'd like to give you the opportunity to toss out the first couple questions to these gentlemen, and then we can open it up to public questions. But we'll turn it over to you for now.
I didn't get either one of the names.
Okay, stand by 1 second. I'm going to try one thing real quick. They told me to go into my settings and try to change my sound because it's kind of low, and when it cuts out, we can't hear you at all. So let me try with some real quick. Selected. I think that's what it's supposed to be on. Selected sound output device. Internal speakers. Let's try that because.
Can you hear me now?
Didn't really change anything.
Can you hear me now? That's me.
Output volume, output. Hmm. Sheesh. Wow, I don't know what to do. I honestly don't know what to do. Yeah, we were getting you loud and clear in the very beginning, and now it keeps cutting out, and I don't think so. Oh. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's all I don't see which one I should go.
This is audio. It's audio. Give them a call on the phone.
Okay, I'm going to try something else. Okay, do you have your cell phone with you?
Yes.
Okay. Now all of a sudden I can hear you just then, but I'm going to call you, and the sound's going to go through my phone.
We might get feedback.
Well, let's give it a shot. Call
Sure.
in your cell.
Hello, who's this? Okay, I've got a little question for each. I didn't get either of their names. I think one was Jeff.
Yeah, Jeff Pierce.
Okay, Jeff Pierce. And I didn't completely hear what he said about marijuana, that he would enforce laws or that he would defend the California laws allowing marijuana.
I would oppose any expansion of recreational marijuana.
Did you hear that?
And he broke a little bit. I think he said he would oppose any recreational use of marijuana.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
That's correct. Okay. And then the other gentleman's name?
Brandon Barnes.
Brandon Barnes.
Yes.
And how does he feel about that comment about marijuana?
Thank you, Sheriff. I am also opposed to recreational marijuana. I grew up in an era where if you had a bag of marijuana, you went to jail.
So let me make this clear, make sure I understand though. The California laws allow recreational use of marijuana, correct?
Yes.
And you'll still arrest people for possessing marijuana?
No, we're going, at least for myself, I'm going to comply with the law, but I don't necessarily support it. I think it needs to be changed.
Well, there's a lot of laws I disagree with.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so one question I have that's conducive to everything that you heard about my introduction. Both of you seem to be very strong on the Second Amendment. If Governor Brown and the state of California outlaw guns, say it's assault rifles, and they order you to go door to door to confiscate assault rifles from your citizens, or if the federal government comes into your community like they did in New Orleans during Hurricane Katrina, or the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, and they start confiscating guns from law-abiding citizens, what would you do either with the state or with the federal government in attempting to confiscate guns?
As sheriff, I would oppose anyone coming in and violating the Second Amendment to law-abiding citizens. I have no problem taking guns away from violent and serious offenders and those who are mentally ill and shouldn't have weapons. I would interpose myself.
Yeah, I think regretfully the likelihood that the federal government's going to come and take our guns is probably not as good as the state trying to come and take our guns right now, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I would agree with Jeff in that I would oppose that. you know, as a law enforcement officer, I have certain exemptions, and I'm worried about when I retire what I'm going to do with all the stuff that I've accumulated. So I'm hoping that legislation will start to swing the other way, and we'll see some positive changes in that regard.
All right, and one follow-up similar to that, with the shooting in Parkland, Florida recently, and perhaps some of the others that we've had recently in Las Vegas and others. How do we square the Second Amendment with some of the proposals that are being talked about? And what would you do if they, in order to make our schools safer? First of all, what would you do to protect the Second Amendment against some of those proposals? And secondly, what would you do to make our schools safer?
I would oppose anything that would infringe upon our right to bear arms. Whatever I could legally do, I would do. On the schools, they've been soft targets for years. I've always been a person that always states that we should have people who are armed. Those teachers who want to be armed and the school district allows it, I'm not opposed to that. In fact, our legislators prohibited recently people with CCWs from even entering a school ground, and didn't allow those school boards to make that decision themselves, especially in a rural area. I'm not opposed to putting SROs in or armed guards in schools, or even using retired military or police officers that have been retired. But we do need to do something, and we are currently working and trying to obtain more school resource officers.
Thank you. Much like Mr. Pierce, I mean, I would also, oppose anybody infringing on the Second Amendment and making laws that restrict our access. So whatever we could do legally to try to stop that, I'm certainly not an attorney, but if there were things that we could do within our means to legally stop that, I would support that. Now, in regards to the schools, my years of SWAT experience, I'm also an active shooter response instructor. So I've got a lot of experience in that area. One thing we have to do is site assessments. We need to find ways to not make them soft targets. We need to make them a little bit more difficult to gain access to. There's things you can do like, bulletproofing certain glass, fencing, shrubbery, things like that that will allow for less ease of access. But in addition to that, carrying concealed is a choice, and I know that not all teachers are comfortable with that. The ones that are, they should be within their right to do that. My only concern is, as a police officer who's uniformed and you're responding to a school where there's supposedly an armed gunman or armed gun lady, and you get there and you see a person running around waving a gun, you don't know if they're friend or foe, and so that does create a concern. I have looked at some numbers. I can tell you, because I manage a courthouse, that having armed security on site runs about $55,000 a year per person. To me, that seems like a more economical option than an armed deputy, because of the PERS and things like that you have to pay into it. And so I think if we could go that route and maybe set an example for Sutter County in that regard, we would probably be a little bit of a trendsetter. I personally don't want to raise taxes, but when it comes to school safety, that's one area where I'm willing to fudge a little bit and help do my share. And so I would probably be looking to do something like that, and then have those officers that are there, those security officers, train with the sheriff's department, so we're all on the same page. We understand what our response is, and active shooter now, it's two people in a plan, but as we saw in Florida, there's an expectation that we go in and we save lives, and so if you're by yourself, that's what you got to do.
Okay. And one last one for me. I might have some other later, but for now, my whole thing is that every law enforcement officer swears a solemn and sacred oath. I'm sorry. Now can you hear me?
Now we got you.
Every peace officer in this country swears an oath to uphold and defend, protect and preserve the United States Constitution. Is there anything that we do in law enforcement routinely that might be unconstitutional? And specifically, do you feel that there's anything wrong or unconstitutional with administrative checkpoints or DUI checkpoints? And I'll go with Mr. Barnes first on that one.
Okay. Yeah, I think in general terms, I mean, there may be things in terms of, search and seizure that may happen that may not be constitutional, and those things get flushed out in the court. I don't know that routinely we do that. As far as DUI checkpoints, I mean, in California, The vehicle code allows you to have a checkpoint. You know, having a driver's license is a privilege. And so I have no objections to those. I understand that there's probably some Fourth Amendment concerns, but you know, they happen all the time. They're properly posted, and you know, every now and then they snag a bad guy who might potentially hurt somebody. So I think that's okay.
Sobriety checkpoints have been upheld to be fair, as long as it's random and the place is advertised. I know that there are times that people go a little too far on those things, other than just checking for alcohol. I'm not for checking for driver's licenses of individuals, but I understand that going through a checkpoint, the goal of that checkpoint is to try to get people not to drink, and a successful checkpoint is a checkpoint where you don't get a drunk driver. However, it is a way to try to stop drunk driving. However, there's a lot better resource by going out and patrol and looking for them, and studies have shown that sobriety checkpoints often don't work as effective as a regular patrol.
I would just add a comment to that. That regardless of what the Supreme Court says, the Fourth Amendment requires probable cause for a stop. And I participated in those stops, and I stopped doing them, and we made them voluntary, because when they're voluntary, the citizens are voluntarily submitting. But when we force them to these stops, we are violating the Fourth Amendment. There is no probable cause on those stops, and if I have to disagree with the Supreme Court on that, I will still keep my oath to uphold and defend the Constitution. That includes the Fourth Amendment and the probable cause provision. So anyway, that's my statement on that. I believe that this is a very worthwhile forum tonight, and I congratulate both of you for being here and having the courage and integrity to stay here at the program.
Thank you, sir.
We'll see you on Sunday.
I'll see you on Sunday, and if either candidate has any questions for me, give them my cell phone, and I hope to see them and meet both of them in person. And it looks like you've got some good candidates running.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Sheriff.
No problem. Bye. Good night.
Okay, so you have a microphone back there? We just have the one? Okay. So we'll open it up. Like Bill said, keep them brief, and we'll give each sheriff an opportunity to answer. And I guess they have to share the mic. So pass it back and forth, please.
Those mics work, Tammy.
Just have to turn them on.
1, 2.
Towards you.
That was all. It's going to get feedback.
My question regards sanctuary cities, sanctuary state. There are already some stories of some incidents in the local area, and I would like to know what your stand is in upholding the governor's concept of sanctuary state as opposed to the Constitution, which requires you to protect us.
Absolutely. I'll go ahead and start with that. So, yeah, I mean, SB 54 went into effect January 1st and effectively made us a sanctuary state. I think the misbelief is that somehow, you know, we're all going to be safer and that certain families will be able to prosper. But the reality is we know that criminals are going to come to these areas, and we're already starting to see that. So, you know, I understand. Unfortunately, you know, as Tammy said earlier, we have to uphold both the federal and the state constitution. And so, this is one of those things where Mr. Sessions was here. They served notice to the state, so hopefully that lawsuit will get the sanctuary state overturned, and it'll allow us to go back to doing business. But I will also tell you, there's this misnomer that we go out and we just randomly arrest people in their homes, and that's not true. We have a lot of significant issues facing our community, right? The homeless issue, school safety, rural patrols, and so the Sheriff's Department does not waste time and resources going out and trying to round up illegal aliens. It just doesn't happen. The good thing is that there is a provision that allows for the Sheriff's Department to notify immigration if somebody comes into custody and they meet a certain criteria, they have a felony conviction for certain crimes, or they commit a violent crime. You can notify ICE. The difference is that the field officer used to be able to give you a detainer and come pick them up. The only difference now, it requires a warrant signed by a federal magistrate. And so we just have to make sure that we have a warrant, and then we get them out of our system.
Okay. I'm on? Okay. I agree with Brandon. He's pretty much spilled it out right to the letter. I am against the sanctuary cities, and I applaud Jeff Sessions in filing his lawsuit. The Sutter County Sheriff's Department, as with any sheriff's organization, has never been in the business of immigration. That's a federal job, and recently the courts have even affirmed through Arizona that it is a federal job, not a state job. If we would be doing immigration, we would be duplicating resources, and we don't have the resources to even begin to do any type of enforcement. So the sanctuaries, one way of, like he explained on how to notify ICE, and there's other ways also of notifying ICE, and I'm looking at a possibility of putting on our website, such as out dates for these people who are sentenced in our jails, and that will also give ICE ability to see who is in our jail and what their out dates are. So again, we are bound by federal and state law. We have to follow the state law, and we do respond to calls. It doesn't matter if you're here legally or illegally.
Good evening. I'm glad you guys stuck around and didn't cut and run like the other guy did. And this goes along the same line as Sheriff Mack's question. I wrote these down earlier today. Okay, I am from the Sutter Yuba Constitutional Republicans also. So the Fourth Amendment states, and I quote, "The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. And no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the person or things to be seized." So how do you feel about searching people or cars without first obtaining a warrant, which seems to be common practice by the police today? How are you getting around the Fourth Amendment, and are you bothered when the civil rights of people are violated?
I don't quite understand what you're trying to. Are you talking about the sobriety checkpoints, or are you talking about just random stops?
I'm talking about sobriety checkpoints, or any kind of checkpoint in the USA,
Okay.
except for a border checkpoint that's actually at the border.
Okay.
So, in other words, getting into people's personal business and affairs in their cars or their persons without a warrant, which seems to be common practice today.
Okay, when sobriety
You know,
checkpoint.
like remember what was it in New York? They did a stop and frisk. Okay, that kind of stuff. So.
In regards to sobriety checkpoints are set up so there's an exit for people to have a choice to leave. When they do come through, the idea of the checkpoint is not to catch the drunk drivers, is to give the information out to educate the public. If somebody should drive through with alcohol in their breath, there's your probable cause to look in further. A vehicle is a moving property, and it is well within the Fourth Amendment to be able to investigate any type of drunk driving from that standpoint.
Okay, I get it. I get your position on that, but it seems to me like when I've watched them take place, that it's like a hunting expedition, you know? Like the cops are looking in the back window and, you know, looking for anything that they can find, and I just don't think that's constitutional. Or I think it doesn't consider our Fourth Amendment. So,
Okay.
what do you think?
Well, if I may answer. So, I mean, there's well-established case law over time. I mean, if I'm walking up to a vehicle and I'm in a position or a place that I have a lawful right to be, and I look down and I see something that's illegal, that establishes your probable cause for the search. The courts have already said, because of the Ross decision, that you do not need to go get a warrant because of the mobility of the vehicle and the fact that it's not likely to be there when you get back. So each case is different. You know, I don't know what your observations were. Maybe somebody was on probation or parole and they were conducting that type of search. Maybe the person gave consent to search the car. I mean, there's all types of ways that these things could take place. But in regards to the Fourth Amendment, the mobility of the vehicle, I mean, the courts have already been pretty clear on that, as long as you have probable cause. At the end of the day, if you don't have probable cause, you shouldn't be going through anybody's car under those circumstances.
Okay, one follow-up. Now, the guy that just left here didn't have the guts to stay and hang out. He said, and I'm not exactly sure, but he said he wants to make sure that all CCW holders have their guns locked away in their house or something to that effect. Yeah, maybe you can correct me on that.
Well, I can't speak for him. I don't know what he was alluding to. I mean, I'm a cop. My gun sits on my dresser at the ready, so that's how we do it in my house.
Why wouldn't it be?
Exactly.
Okay.
If I could have two,
Yeah.
I would.
But what I'm getting to...
I got more than two, you're right. I got two on me right now.
What I'm alluding to is the people's right to privacy as guaranteed in the Fourth Amendment.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I think that should be respected big time.
Well, I would agree with you, and if any of our officers were doing something that was deemed to be unconstitutional in terms of search or seizure, then we would take appropriate action.
Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Everyone's shy.
Mine's a much lighter question. I'm curious, because it covers most of your law career, last 10, 15 years. I'd like to know how many times you've actually been registered and have voted in Sutter County in our election process.
Okay. You want to go, Jeff?
Sure. Yes, I established residency in Sutter County in September of 2017, and I have not voted in a Sutter County election. However, throughout my entire life, I've never missed an election once.
Okay. For myself, I actually I grew up in Placer County, and so I registered to vote like most people right out of high school. When I moved up here to Sutter County, there was probably a few years until I actually registered at late 20s, early 30s. And as far as I can recall, I've voted consistently since. I mean, 9/11 happened, and I started realizing how much money was being taken out of my check, and I really wanted to make sure that I had a say and a voice, and so I've been voting since then.
Hello again.
Hello.
I'm vertically challenged.
Weren't you supposed to go to the back of the line?
Yeah.
I did. I'm at the front of the line now. I just wanted to very respectfully make a slight correction.
Okay.
And this is not uncommon. This Constitution is not taught in our schools anymore. The whole of America has a total misconception of what's in that document. But one of your responses referenced case law, and I just wanted to remind the room that the judicial branch of our government does not make law. So it says in Article 1 of the Constitution that all legislative powers reside with a Congress. That means Congress is the only branch of our government that actually makes law. So that doesn't leave any room left over for anybody else. Executive orders, judicial decisions, opinions, they're opinions, and they only relate to the case that they're giving an opinion on. So just a slight little tweak so that you understand that when you're dealing with constitutional things, case law is only relevant to the case that they made that opinion in. So, teaching moment. Thank you.
I have a question about your thoughts on policies and procedures. In Sutter County, it's a horrific situation where their policies and procedures are very outdated, including in the Sheriff's Department. When I ask the question, what causes them to not update policies and procedures, it always comes back to money. But in our jails, we've lost prisoners. Lives, it cost us a lot of money, but it cost us lives, which matters most to me. And if our policies and procedures that are guiding our law enforcement are from the 70s and 80s, we have a real problem. And I'd like to know how you would address that. And I'd like to know how, Mr. Pierce, that you individually could change that since you've already been in the status quo. So both of you, I'd like an answer from that perspective.
First of all, the Sutter County Sheriff's Office reviews their policy once a year. Any changes that are needed to be made, we make them. To go on record, that is absolutely incorrect. So if that is a fact, I'd love for you to show the public the updated public policies and procedures for the Sheriff's Department that have been updated in a year. That would just blow my mind. I'd be so happy. Yeah, in fact, I just updated the consent to search policy with the new form just the other day.
So my question is,
an order.
My question isn't about consent to search. My question is policies and procedures inside your jail.
The jail is updated every year. It has to be by law. We go through
I agree
an
it
audit
has to be
every
by
year.
law, but I don't agree that it has been done. So you might want to go back and check, but
Can you give me a specific incident?
I sure can.
Okay.
Young Nathan Prasad died in your jail, and he was released on his own recognizance into Ride Out Hospital to actually die, because that way he's not dying on the sheriff's watch. And that was just a few years ago, and I can tell you then those policies were in the 70s and 80s. Now, if you come and you've changed that, that'd be a wonderful article in our newspaper to see how your jail health staff and the new system is working. So, not to debate that with you, but you might want to go back and really check that.
Okay.
And you needed me to respond. I can't respond for Sutter County because I don't currently work there.
I know.
I'm hoping to.
I'm hoping what you'll tell me is what you'll do to change that.
Yeah, absolutely. So at least on the Yuba County side, we use a service called Lexipol. And anytime there's a change in the law that impacts your policy, they immediately send it to you. It's electronic, and so it updates your policy almost immediately. You go through, it'll tell you what the previous language was, what the current language is that's being recommended. You hit OK, and it immediately implements it into your policy. If they're not using something like that, they strongly need to. Jail policies are not part of that because not all, they cater to a large group of people because they're companies. So police departments, sheriff's departments. So most people do have an independent jail policy manual. We also update it annually. And if you read our policies, it'll say when it was initiated, and then you'll say date of last review. And so
our policies at Sutter County have been handwritten and lined through and initialed where no one can even read them. So, right. And that is in particular to the jail policy.
Yeah, that's
so
unacceptable.
Maybe I should have been really specific with my question, but I think policies and procedures in the Sutter County are horrific in every department in Sutter County right now.
Yeah, I mean, when we had the spillway incident, they're pulling an emergency plan off from 1984.
And we're supposed to be patient. Didn't you hear Mr. Whitaker say, please be patient? We haven't had an emergency for 20 years. Really? Yeah. You had 20 years to get it done.
Absolutely.
So,
well, it's been another year, and I still don't know what the plan is. So
me either. Thank you.
I'm with you.
Well, if I can follow up on that, I would invite you to come to the Sutter County Sheriff's Office and sit down with me and go through that policy and tell me what your problems with those policies are.
Hi, I'm the legal owner of a 38 Special, and it got it got stolen. And the guy got out of prison, and I still didn't have my gun back. And when I got it back, it was about 3 years after he got out, and it was all rusted from that powder they put on it. How can he get out of prison before I get my gun back?
Every day. Terrible. I'm sorry.
That gun is ruined.
So answer.
How could it happen?
Well, I don't know enough about the specific case, so
Well, the gun was stolen and I didn't get it back. I don't think
they like to give guns back.
Is
yeah.
that the problem?
I wasn't in charge of convicting him, so I'm not sure how he got sentenced. So I can't really speak to
My
that.
gun's ruined.
Yes, sir.
Good evening. I'm from the Sutter Yuba Constitutional Conservative group here. And one thing I've learned, I recently have taken the constitutional class, and I've been blown away by how many rights that we have given up by not knowing what our rights are. And if anybody is going to do their job correctly and with integrity, especially if they have an oath and they give an oath, then I would encourage you, and my question is, on this upcoming class that they're having next Sunday,
yes, sir.
I would encourage you, and I would like to see if you are both willing to attend that class, because without knowledge, we can't do our job correctly. And to know what our constitutional, I'm still blown away by how much that we've given away by not knowing, and we can't defend what we don't know. So my question is, are both of you planning on attending this upcoming course?
No, so I will tell you, I'm going to make a concerted effort to try. I just found out about it a little over a week ago. As Tammy kind of alluded to, we're in the middle of campaigning, and so I've already got other things scheduled, including needing to walk on the weekend, which is very important. But if I get the endorsement and Tammy's willing to put an army together to help me walk, then it would be a good use of my time. I absolutely think it's important to participate in that and be better educated. And so I will talk to Tammy, because if I cannot make it Sunday, I'm certainly interested in attending it sometime in the near future. But I will make a concerted effort to rearrange my schedule, yes.
Great, thank you. I know that the people here just represent a small percentage of the influence that we have. And so I just, speaking on behalf of a lot of other people, but I would strongly encourage to learn what we are defending, especially for us as citizens. We really need to know.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
On the day that I was notified of that, it was put on my calendar, and I'll be there.
Great. Thank you.
Thank both of you gentlemen for being here. I really appreciate it. I live in Yuba County, and I'm really sorry that nobody is here from Yuba County. But I heard it was some meetings, maybe 3 or 4 months ago. I heard some gentlemen talking about this subject with the sheriff department, and they said it would be more efficient for both cities, Marysville and Yuba City, if the sheriff department took over, got rid of the police departments, and the sheriff department did everything. What do you guys think about that?
Specific to Yuba County?
Well, either one. I mean,
yeah,
if that would be,
I don't know
if
how
more
well,
stuff would get done, because I've heard, well, I better not make stuff that I don't have the proof, but.
Well, I'm not sure how well that would work on this side of the river, primarily because Yuba City is a much larger jurisdiction than the city of Marysville. You know, I know on that side of the river, because I work there, they've looked at consolidating some dispatch services and things like that, but ultimately the city didn't think that it was fiscally something that would benefit them, and so the talks kind of broke down. So beyond that, I mean, I'd say you'd have to reach out to Sheriff Durfer and Chief Sachs and get their opinion on that.
the only thing that's been discussed is consolidated dispatch in the past, and it's not financially feasible to do it at this time, and plus it centralizes everything. But the PD is basically under the jurisdiction of the city council. I don't know how it would work or if it could legally even be done to work
But do you
together.
personally think that would be a good idea?
I would have to do a lot of study on it. I couldn't give you an answer.
And I wanted to state that I'm also with the Sutter Yuba Constitutional Republicans, and I'll see you on Sunday.
Okay.
And hope
I'll
to
be
see you
here.
there too, Mr.
Yes,
Barnes.
sir. Yes, sir.
Got another question.
Yes, sir.
Can you explain your feelings on why? Now, I want to say that we just saw one of the high-ranking government officials in Washington, D.C. get indicted for lying to the FBI, okay? So, can you explain your feelings on why a police officer can lie to a suspect, but it's illegal for the suspect to lie to the officer? Is it right to have this double standard, and wouldn't it be better if everybody told the truth?
Yes, it would be better if everyone told the truth. Subterfuge is is a tactic that can be used. I will tell you that in some very important investigations, specifically ones where children were being abused, I was able to use a ruse to get the person to ultimately confess. And so, while I understand your position, there are benefits to it from an investigative standpoint.
You ready for me?
We're ready.
In the purview of the Constitution, the only person outside of ones being elected in Congress and whatnot, president, the only other person that mentions is a sheriff. The sheriffs have control of the United States if they want to take that. Now, that being said, the gentleman was talking about our freedoms that we have lost. We have lost our freedoms on the Constitution because we have not taught our children what the hell's going on. You can see it on these TV shows. These people are supposed to be really appropriate and smart and everything. They don't even know how to add 2 and 2. They think they get 5 out of it. But as the sheriff, now this is a controversial point I'm going to make. I think the sheriff should have some kind of control over the curriculum of the schools where they'll be educated correctly. I have known people that are straight A students and go to college and flunk out because they don't know anything. Now, I think this is where our problem lies primarily, but the real problem is we don't get up and say, hey, you're wrong. I'm not going to stand for it anymore. I'm tired of giving my money away for some cockamamie scheme they have going on all the time. Like fast trains to nowhere, tunnels to hell as far as I'm concerned. It's a lot of money.
You must watch Water's World, huh?
Watch what?
Water's World?
Jesse Waters.
Jesse Waters.
I knew everything Jesse Waters knew before he started talking.
That is probably true.
When I went to grammar school, I had an 8th grade whole semester to know the Constitution. A whole semester. I missed 2 questions on that Constitution. I put a period in the wrong place and I misspelled a name. Otherwise, I had 100. About 8 or 9 kids in my class had hundreds in the Constitution. You can't even get these people to, they didn't know how to spell Constitution. Anyway, that's what I see about our problems, part of them anyway. That's just a little bit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a controversial question. There are 2 groups currently trying to do something to escape California other than CalExit. Should one or both of those organizations be successful, how would you approach that? Becoming a part of a new state?
Are you talking about the Jefferson state or just splitting?
Jefferson and New California are both working very hard. Right. And should we become a separate state, many things are going to change. And the sheriff would be elevated back to the position of higher influence. How would you handle that and prepare for that?
Well, I think I would accept it. I don't want to be with one part of the state that is now in control. So obviously if we split and we had a different state, such as a Jefferson state, I think I'd feel a lot more comfortable there. And yes, I would be willing to be more of a constitutionalist, and I would look forward to it.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. If something like that were to happen, obviously, and you knew that this was going to take place, you would start making some type of plan to help with transition. My concern is that most of the infrastructure is not available in the southern part of the state, and I'm sure they're worried about us charging them for water resources. So right now we're not equally represented in the north part of the state. We know that. Our values and in the things that we look forward to on a day-to-day basis, they're not represented by Los Angeles and San Diego in the northern part of the state. And so, but unfortunately they have the voting numbers. And so I think it's more likely that we're going to see some changes that will help us be better represented. So I hope that answers your question.
Well, the line keeps getting shorter, and I got a slew of questions. Okay. I am from the Sutter Yuba Constitutional Republicans, and I love my Constitution. I keep it with me all the time. It's getting a little tattered. I wanted to know, and I think it's good for everybody to know, what is the salary and benefit package for an average deputy in Sutter County and for the sheriff himself?
For a step one deputy, it's roughly 80 to 85,000. For the sheriff, it depends what range you come in. It could be as low as I call around 130,000 without the benefits to 153,000, I believe.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously Jeff would better know because he's part of that department. I've looked at it a little bit. Honestly, the sheriff's position, I'm not motivated by money. I make a good living. I'm doing this because I think I need to see positive changes, and so whatever the salary is what it is. But I will tell you, as it relates to the deputies, we need to work with the board to try to stabilize the pay. The starting bottom tier deputy for Sutter County makes $800 less a month than their counterparts over in Yuba County. And corrections is the same way. It's not a big disparity, but it's about $300 a month. Dispatch is the same. They're like 22% below average. If we're going to hire and retain good people, we need to pay them what prevailing wages are, because we waste a lot of money training people, doing backgrounds, sending them, sometimes sponsored through an academy, and then they leave your department and they go somewhere else for more pay. I believe that there's a lot of good people here. The ones that are here now, it's because they have roots here. They're probably not likely to leave, but there are some that we train and we retain, and they take off because of better pay. And so I think if you just give them what is normal for this area, you'll see a big improvement in the level of service.
Good evening. My name is Steve Meyer. I have a question basically for both of you. A grand jury report a couple of years ago stated that the Sheriff's Department in Live Oak, the equipment that they have is not up to par with all the deputies I feel should have. Regarding that subject, how would you, with the last subject that you just spoke about regarding budgets, how can you get the deputies, which I feel the first responders should have all the equipment that they can have, and apparently right now they don't. So you have a budget that you have to juggle to keep employment and equipment. So can you touch on that?
Sure. I don't quite understand what you're talking about, them not having equipment. I think we probably have one of the best equipments around in this region. Live Oak, they get their patrol vehicles from the state cops, and the city of Live Oak buys those cars. They're outfitted with pretty much what the deputies have chosen and asked for. Anytime we have equipment needs every year, we will ask our deputies if they have any ideas or things that we need. And if I'm correct, I think we pretty much give them pretty much everything they've asked for a reason. When we build these cars, we have a committee of deputies that sit there and decide what they should have on the car. So they're the ones that are driving it, not me. And as far as I know, our vehicles are probably the top vehicles around in this region. Weapons, we allow them to carry the weapons. We give the best weapons for the SWAT team. We give best vehicles. I don't recall the grand jury even commenting on equipment.
I believe it was the 2015-2016 grand jury report. And it had to do with some shields. It's at the back of my mind. I can't think of everything right now that was in it. But I know it came out in the report.
Yeah, we have purchased ballistic shields. They are
For
available.
all deputies.
All the deputies have access to a ballistic shield.
Okay. I just want to make sure that something, if something has changed in the last couple of years.
We bought a lot of equipment.
Okay.
I would just add to that, if I was in office, my goal would be to look at the equipment and develop some type of succession plan, because things get old, radios get outdated, handguns get worn, all of those things. And so you need to be able to project and not wait till it's too late. Additionally, if you go through the current budget that's on the department's website, there looks like there's about $340,000 of discretionary funding that the sheriff has available. So there's no reason for there not to be equipment and for people in Live Oak to not have the same level of equipment that you're seeing in other parts of the county. That just should not happen.
And it doesn't happen. They do have the best equipment.
Thank you.
I know you're both aware, Sheriff John D'Agostini in El Dorado County. Seems like some of the federal and state agencies were intruding on his jurisdiction and overrunning theirs. Would you both be amenable to tell either federal or state to butt out of your area or your county if they were like for speeding tickets and stuff like that? That seems like a little overbearing for what a statewide agency or a federal agency should be doing.
Yeah, absolutely, depending on the scenario. If there's something that I feel strongly about, and I know that we have the resources, the manpower, and the expertise to take care of it, I would have no problem telling them that this is our jurisdiction and we're going to take care of it ourselves.
I'm the same way as Brandon is.
Hello to both of you. My name is Kayla Rakoski. I'm with the Yuba Sutter Constitutional Republicans. And my question for the both of you is, would you sooner uphold the Constitution, or would you enforce laws that blatantly contradict the Constitution, whether they be federal or state laws?
I'm going to uphold the Constitution of the United States. I'm not going to enforce an unjust law or a law that violates the Constitution.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say that statement's a little vague. I guess it would depend on the law. We just had a conversation about, DUI checkpoints and things like that and the constitutionality of those. So I think it would just depend on the scenario. But, at the end of the day, the goal is public safety, right? We need to keep our community safe, and we need to move it forward, and we need to better ourselves. So that's always going to be the primary goal. Now, whether that goal falls on the side of the Fourth Amendment or a state law, it would just depend on the scenario.
All right, thank you both.
Absolutely.
Hi, I'm one of those people in the CIR. My question is, I know that when someone breaks the law, they have a consequence. And I'd like you to talk about the homeless, please. What
Okay.
happens with them and why are they breaking the law continually?
Right.
So please, thank you.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I mean, we saw in the paper this last week that there was a complaint filed. I think it's absolute crap that, you know, the officer is out there trying to enforce the law and the homeless people are going to turn around and sue, saying that, you know, we're not providing appropriate resources for them. I know this county has provided a lot of resources for the homeless people. The reality is that some of them, you know, they will accept those resources and they will try to better themselves. But there's a contingent down there that are just squatters. They enjoy that lifestyle. I will tell you that based on my experience, there's a fair amount of them that don't even originate from our community. They migrate here from other places because the River Bottoms has a reputation. Those people need to be sent back to the communities that they came from, and they need to be a drain on those resources, not our own. It's a complex issue. I will tell you that I think statistics show that back in 2008, there were about 40 documented people that were homeless in the River Bottoms. That number is now over 1,000. I think one of the problems is that it's a tough problem, and you need to be patient, and you need to work with a lot of resources to solve it. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take a period of time to reverse that 10-year effect that we've had. So I think from the sheriff's standpoint, working in conjunction with the people across the river to develop some type of a task force. I know we do that on the Yuba County side. I see no reason why we can't do that on this side. And go down there, enforce the laws that can be reasonably enforced, make references or referrals to those people that will actually accept resources. Sometimes, you know, there's homeless vets down there and other people that just need a point in the right direction. They need someone to take them to DMV and get them an ID card so they can start getting some of the benefits that they need. And so it's a complex problem. I think we all need to work together to resolve it and start trying to affect some change. But I think too often we give up too soon because it is a complex and hard problem. Nobody wants to stay in it for the long haul.
And I wholeheartedly agree. The homeless is a problem. There's 378 of the homeless people in Sutter County right now. We were served a temporary restraining order because we enforced the 10-day rule. And as soon as we gave that out, that's when they popped on the restraining order. I'm willing to help a person who's down in his luck, that needs a little helping hand, and willing to want to help themselves. I'm willing to help those type of people. I'm willing to help those people who are mentally ill that need to have resources and point them to the right resources. I don't have any sympathy for those who just want to live off the tax dole and get everything they can for free, ruin our environment, and don't want to be productive. The Sutter County is working to trying to find transitional housing. They've been working with the health department, with the social services, with various consultants. We meet almost a weekly basis discussing about the homeless and what direction we're going to go. Right now, the Sutter County is trying to find a traditional housing for they can go. And once we get the traditional housing set up, then we're free to enforce those the camping ordinance again.
And I will just say, to add to that, since the Yuba County guys didn't show up, there's a big empty mall sitting over there in Linda that's the perfect opportunity to use for transitional housing and resources.
I'd like to follow up on Steve Meyer's question about Live Oak Sheriff Department not having enough protective gear. And so what I'm going to do is just read a little piece out of their 216 grand jury report. I think it's a shame that so many people don't bother to read these. Live Oak Substation is staffed by officers from Sutter County Sheriff's Department, and it currently does not have live video feed from the interview room to the viewing room, or the ability to audio record interviews. The suspect is either interviewed without recording or must be transparent to the main SCJ for a recorded interview. Currently, there is an insufficient number of ballistic helmets and ballistic shields to equip all of the officers, or the deputies, excuse me. Deputies are also in need of additional less than lethal equipment. While inspecting the Live Oak substation, the Sutter County Grand Jury learned that the department is planning on using any available COPS grants in order to upgrade their stations. So I'm guessing that in your comment, the ballistic shields have been taken care of, but have the audio and video equipment been taken care of for that station, or are they still at risk?
No, that's been taken care of. They all have access to tasers and lethal force. All those things have been rectified.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Recently, I've been told that there is a #1 priority for the Sheriff's Department. I'd like to know what it is.
I believe it's getting Brandon Barnes elected.
I think you have a disagreement there too. But and the reason I'm asking this is having jails is what I was told was the #1 priority. But we don't have officers patrolling southern Sutter County. And I feel like the citizens themselves are being left unprotected.
Well, we do patrol those areas. Yes, we have less deputies on patrol than we do probably in 1980s. We are trying to, hopefully this annexation will go through, and that will free up some deputies to go down into the outer rural areas. Also, we're trying to put in for a couple community service officers to address cold calls, which are mainly calls that aren't life-threatening or going in progress, to have those community service officers take those calls to release those deputies on patrol to be more proactive in those areas. Yes, the constitutional job of the sheriff is the jail, and the Sutter County Board of Supervisors hold the purse strings for all the funding. We go back and we ask, and I think the sheriff's made it very clear to the board that we needed the deputies, and we're doing everything we can.
If I may. So, you know, again, I don't have the benefit of working internally at the Sheriff's Department. All I can tell you is what I read. They have 31 allocated deputy positions, and I'm told about 26 of those are currently filled. That does not include the 7 that are contracted for Live Oak. So if you take those off the board and you take out Yuba City, which has their own police department, you've essentially got 27 officers that need to be deployed into the rural parts of our county. I got to believe that's being mismanaged right now, and if we look at our staffing plans and we look at how we're deploying our resources, we can get better and we will make improvements in that area.
Thank you.
Hey, I was waiting for another opportunity. Okay, so I'm curious, you know, recently I read an article in the newspaper about the CCW permits in our county and the surrounding counties. And it seemed to me that a lot of the other counties were far more restrictive than Sutter County. What are your feelings on CCW permits and also the Second Amendment, which declares that our right to keep and bear arms, it doesn't say may not, it says shall not be infringed. So, what are your thoughts on CCWs, the holders of CCWs in Sutter County right now? I didn't like that other guy's program. And what about constitutional carry, you know? I believe it's our God-given right for self-preservation. So what are your thoughts?
I would agree with you in that regard. Unfortunately, we live in the state of California, which has some of the most ridiculous and restrictive laws. I did read the article in the paper today. I believe it was about 2,260 CCWs that were issued in Sutter County. If I'm not doing my math right, that's like 2.3% of our population. I was surprised it was that low. I'd like to see it actually a little bit higher. So, you know, in my opinion, if you need it for personal protection, that's good enough for me because that's why I carry mine. So absolutely, I have no objections to that. I will compliment Sutter County. They actually have a pretty good program. So, you know, I'm not looking to make that more restrictive. What I think probably where we differ is that, you know, you take the class and then you have to renew it every couple years. I want to know that personally, if you're out there and you're carrying, and you're in a position to protect my family, that you can do it and you can hit what you're shooting at. And so I really want to see and make sure that people are taking the time to go to the range and to train and to be efficient and effective with their guns, because you have that expectation of me, and if you're going to carry, I should have that same expectation of you. And so that's where I stand on it.
I believe that any person who wants to carry a concealed weapons permit that has good moral character and a reason for personal protection should apply for one. The Sutter County Sheriff's Office has always made it very easy to get a permit. We work very hard to get people through. We've expanded the number of weapons that you can have on a permit. We have not raised, and we refuse to raise our fees, the county fees, on our license holders. I can't stop the state. The state does their own little thing. In addition, we try to get everybody through as quickly as possible. And for a while, we were getting people in and getting CCWs within 2 or 3 days from the state on their checks. Now it's taking about 90 days. And they never increased their staffing, and that's been pretty much problematic. Sometimes you wonder, there's a conspiracy here, is basically never increase that staffing to try to prevent you from having your CCWs. We were at one point where we were 90 days behind on our interviews. We had so many people applying. I asked the command staff to come in for about 2 weeks straight during night hours, including myself, and we caught up all those people who wanted to have their interviews. And I think that's one thing that we've done that's been very positive. I think the CCW instructors will all tell you that Sutter County is very friendly, including they've had their people they've taught even made comments that we are the best county to get a CCW through. And I encourage you to get a CCW if you want to carry a CCW.
Good evening. Thank you for being here. Quick question about, it looks like that our society is finding a bigger importance of protecting our schools. My question is, how do you feel towards the federal government funding this type of protection? And also, what do you think about the age limit to 21 is required to purchase a weapon?
The age limit, that's a sore subject for me. I believe if you're 18 years old, and you can sign up for the military or get drafted and go die for your country, you should be able to carry the weapon. It shouldn't be 21. What makes an 18-year-old more apt to go out and use a gun for ill will? That's the person. I mean, there's too many people who have fought and died in our country to keep us free. And if you're 18 years old, you should be able to carry that weapon. I'm totally against raising that age limit to 21.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm not a proponent of raising the age limit. Age has nothing to do with your level of maturity, and quite frankly, I was able to purchase and own a gun, and it actually got me through several law enforcement classes. And you know, without the ability to do that, I may not be sitting here today. So.
And also, what's your opinion on the federal funding of bringing enforcement in our schools for security purposes?
Well, I will tell you personally, I haven't read anything on it. I think if I'm understanding you, there's federal funds that are going to be made available to better our schools. Is that what you're saying?
It's kind of being proposed right now.
Yeah, well, I suppose it would depend on how much and you know, how much it's going to come out of our pocket. But I will tell you, like I said earlier, you know, if I got to pay a little more to keep our children safe, I'm more than willing to do that. You know, I think hardening some of these schools, making them so they're not soft targets, and making sure that we have some form of armed defense to protect our children, I would completely support that.
I'm in support of James Gallagher's bill, AB 2267, I believe, that will allow money to go to schools to be able to afford armed security. It's costly, but it's a heck of a lot cheaper than a bullet train.
Yeah. Well, that's for sure. Bravo. Okay. I think that protecting our school belongs to our local and our sheriff's department, and that although it's a good thing, it's a good purpose for the federal government to be, you know, trying to finance this, but I think they're overstepping their bounds. I think it's an unconstitutional action. It's called usurpation. And, you know, it might seem like it's a good practice right now, but the liberals and the whole agenda that's behind this heartless hypocrisy of gun control will use those boundaries to further their agenda. So it's something that's a fine line, and I just wanted your opinion on that. And it seems like, you know, knowledge of the Constitution helps us protect our local strength, because God is our shield, and our sheriff stands before us.
No, absolutely, and I wouldn't advocate allowing the federal government to just come in and take over, but you know, that's our responsibility. Local matters, local safety, especially of our children, that's our responsibility. But if they want to supplement us with some financing that will help pay for bulletproof glass, something like that, you know, I would be willing to have that discussion.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, I keep holding back to let others in ahead of me, just so you know. I've been doing that. But also I realized last time I didn't ask a question. I broke my own rule. But that's only because Jason taught me that rules are for other people, so. I'm going to ask you the question, are you a David? And I'm going to preface this question with a little bit of an explanation. By the way, Sheriff Richard Mack wrote a book called Are You a David? And I'm going to bring to light, Noel Miles commented earlier on the fact that we have lost a lot of our liberties, a lot of our God-given rights. They've eroded away. And the sheer simple truth of that is, yes, that happened, and why did it happen? It's because we let them. And so I want to bring to light that, Sheriff Mack touched on it a little bit, our constitutional rights are violated daily. And it's simply because it's a matter of that's how things are done. There's, you know, you hear all the excuses. That's, you know, my boss told me to do that. That's how our department operates. You know, I have probable cause because I see something lying in the back seat. There's just, it's a slippery slope, and every day God-given rights are violated, and our constitutional rights are violated. So David took on Goliath, okay, and he was very outmatched, right? And honestly, the sheriff being the chief law enforcement officer in the region, you're going to have a lot to bear on your shoulders. What I want you to speak to is the David in you and what that's going to look like for us, and to what point you're willing to stand up to these things that are just business as usual that we've gotten used to because we let them. I just want you to speak to that a little bit and tell us a little bit about what kind of a David you will be as a sheriff.
I'll go ahead and answer. So I guess I've always thought of myself more as a Spartan, but I'll be happy to be a David. You know, without having read the book and having a stronger point of reference, it's hard to really say. But I understand, you know, exactly, Tammy, I think where you're going with that. You know, there's going to be challenges, and we have to look at those things individually and determine what the best recourse of action is. I mean, obviously, we want to do what's constitutionally right. We also want to protect our county from liability, and we want to set a good example for the people that we supervise on a daily basis. And so, you know, public safety and the security of you guys and our community, that's going to be my primary goal. And so whatever means I need to do to achieve that goal, that's where I'm going to lay myself.
And I fully agree with Brandon on that statement. We will do everything we can to stay within the Constitution and to protect the public and stand up to the federal government if they should come in and try to violate the Constitution. We'll do what we can in our power, within our reason. As a sheriff's we have an organization called the California Sheriff's Association, States Sheriff's Association, which represents all the sheriffs. And anytime we have any type of legal issues, we work through them and try to resolve it through our legislators if all possible.
Okay, one more question, and then we're going to wrap it up and let these guys go home.
I'm with the Sutter Yuba Constitutional Republic. My question is, if you get elected, what will be your top 3 priorities as sheriff?
So obviously, the homeless issue is something that needs to be addressed. Providing services in the rural parts of our county would be the second thing. The last thing that doesn't necessarily impact the community as much, but it will make the department more efficient. We need to overhaul the department. We need to look at every aspect of it, much like you were talking about the equipment. You know, what needs to be replaced? You know, I will tell you, I've talked to officers that say their evidence system is so archaic that they're still using triplicate forms. We need to modernize the sheriff's department, and we need to do that from internal. And so that's going to be one of my goals. I know through that, I think we'll get more efficient, which you'll see, you know, more notable improvement in terms of how we provide service to the public. But so those would be my three: addressing the homeless, rural patrols, and then overhauling the sheriff's department and bringing everything up to date and into the 21st century.
I want to increase the patrols in the rural areas, and I am trying to set up programs, as I've said before, with the community service officers, the annexation, as well as creating South Sutter volunteers to help out with us. That is a big priority. I want to expand our gang task force and give them a little bit more resources, such as another deputy to assist us with the gang problems that we have on both sides of the river. And I want to stand up against the expansion of marijuana. I think the recreational marijuana is going to be a total flop. If you look at Denver, I think it's going to impact our county very severely over the next few years. And I think that's a priority as well.
One more real quick.
Okay.
I'm Jason Reichard, Constitutional Republicans.
Rules are made to break.
Exactly, they don't apply. No, seriously, I think everybody here will agree that our Second Amendment has already been infringed upon greatly. But what would you consider an infringement, each one of you, upon the Second Amendment?
Well, you know, I think if you take the Second Amendment, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little cotton out there, but if you take the Second Amendment at face value, we shouldn't need to carry CCWs, right? So that's probably the first infringement, and it's a slippery slope, and it just went downhill from there. So,
okay,
I agree.
Okay, because I mean, most of the people in here, I mean, we consider a 30-round magazine to be a standard magazine, not a high-capacity magazine. And what we don't understand is if you guys can carry it, we should be able to carry it. And the fact is back in the day when the Second Amendment was written, the modern weapon was a musket, and we could all have it. So that's where we're looking at it from. I would like to know where your standpoint is do you feel that we should be able to be outfitted like the Sheriff's Department? And it's a yes or no question, yes or no?
yeah, I would agree. Like I already said, the day I retire, I'm going to be a felon because I got things that I won't be able to have. So
I agree 100% with that.
Yeah.
I have an 85%er AR.
All right, good enough. Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, let's wrap it up. Listen, we're gonna give you guys each a couple minutes to make a closing statement, and then I'm sure you'll be assailed when you're trying to get out the door with other questions.
No problem. Go ahead, Jeff. No, please go ahead.
First of all, I want to thank you again for having us here. It was very enlightening. It was a pleasure being here. The voters will be going to the voting booth in June, and it's very important that the next elected sheriff be well experienced, have the knowledge, the education, the integrity, and being willing to work hard. Experience means a lot. I've been through my years. I've been referred as a workaholic. I am a workaholic. I do everything in my power to make the sheriff's office better. I do try to provide our officers with the best equipment. I do want to get the service to our community and decrease times it takes to our rural areas. And I've been endorsed by 4 sheriffs, including the current Sheriff J. Paul Parker and 3 retired sheriffs, and that is Sheriff Jim Binney, Art Brandwood, and Sheriff Gary Tyndall. All these sheriffs I've worked personally with or underneath them, and they are well versed on what I can do, and they've seen my accomplishments through the year. They know and they have trust in me that I'm the person who can hit the road running as elected sheriff and move the sheriff's department forward. I know the budget inside out. I know the $20 million that we have has to be spent wisely. I consider myself as a fiscal conservative. I believe that tax dollars that we get is worked. Basically, it's your hard work money coming to us to spend. Of course, through the years, the unfunded liability has impacted what we have to use for the sheriff's office, and as well as social services is also cutting into that pie as well. We have to be more innovative, and we have trying to use technology to assist us in handling calls, and we have a lot of challenges ahead of us. We, as Brandon mentioned, we have Assembly Bill 109, where we have the state prisoners housed in our jail. We also have Proposition 47 that took a lot of felonies and reduced them down to misdemeanors, basically taking away our ability to take DNA off these people who committed felonies, because now they're misdemeanors, we no longer take DNA from them. We have the homeless problem that we need to address, and we're trying to address it the best we can. Obviously, it caused a restraining order against us. But we'll move through that. We'll work with transitional housing. We'll find the resources to help those who are mentally ill that need help and help the ones that need to be helped. I am a person that's always available. Anytime anybody wants me, I've never had a problem with staff getting a hold of me. It's night or day. I've always been there, whether I'm here or away or even out of the country. I'm very available. So again, thank you. And I would...
Okay. So much like Jeff, I'm a workaholic. I've accomplished a lot in my 22 years. I always like to joke and say that for the better part of about 19 years, I was on call for 19 years straight through a combination of being in investigations and being on the SWAT team. I will tell you that I do have the endorsement of Sheriff Durfer. That does not come easily. For those of you that know Sheriff Durfer, he does not hand that out unless you are absolutely deserving of that. I also have the endorsements of 12 other active sheriffs that are currently in California. I have the endorsement of the Gridley Police Chief, Chief Price. I will tell you as well that I'm the only candidate that has endorsements from our Reserve Association, our Deputy Sheriff's Association, and our Management Association. All three of those groups unanimously voted to support me in my endeavors to become the next sheriff of Sutter County. It speaks volumes when you have the support of the men and women that you fought alongside for the last 22 years. Without that, and without their support, then I would have no business being out here today and wasting your time. I will tell you it's quite simple. I think it's time for a changing of the guard. Jeff is a very nice person. I like Jeff, and he's accomplished a lot. But if you're like me and you believe that it's time for Sutter County to move in a better, more progressive direction, then you've only got two choices at that point, and one of them already turned tail and ran tonight. So I will tell you that I will serve you guys proudly and faithfully, and when it comes time to vote in June, I hope you guys will vote for me for sheriff. Thank you.
I want to thank you both for being here tonight and taking the heat, and I want to thank each and every one of you people out here in the audience for the great questions you had, for coming here tonight and participating. God bless you all. Hope to see you next time. Yuba County Board of Supervisors. Thank you.